Hello everyone, and welcome back. Tonight, we are taking a trip back in time, all the way to the pastel-scented, neon-lit, and impossibly dramatic decade of the 1980s. If you have ever wondered what it felt like to wake up in a world where shoulder pads could double as armor, hairspray was treated almost like a form of currency, and femininity seemed to come in aerosol cans, then tonight's story is for you. The 1980s were not just a time of pop music and movies that have since become cultural touchstones. They were a period when image, effort, and style were elevated to something approaching an art form, or perhaps a battlefield. It is a world where every reflection in a fluorescent-lit bathroom told a story of aspiration, where girls and women alike were expected to understand the unspoken rules of appearance before breakfast, and where the quest for perfection often required more preparation than many of us give a single morning in our current lives. Imagine stepping into a suburban home, circa 1984. The walls are painted in pastel shades that are charming yet slightly dizzying, floral patterns adorn the furniture, and a faint haze of chemical-scented products lingers in the air. You hear the distant whir of a ceiling fan, the faint shuffle of feet across carpet, and the unmistakable hiss of a hairspray can opening somewhere in the house. The world outside is awake with the hum of a neighborhood beginning its day. But inside, there is a ritual underway that has nothing to do with breakfast or schoolwork and everything to do with a single, central pursuit: achieving the perfect expression of femininity. As you approach the bathroom mirror, you are greeted by your own reflection, already partially framed by a cascade of teased, voluminous hair that seems to defy gravity. The fluorescent light flickers gently, illuminating a landscape of sticky countertops, combs, round brushes, and curling irons, each a tool, each a weapon, each a necessary instrument in the careful construction of an idealized self. The 1980s presented a vision of femininity that was at once attainable and impossibly demanding. It was the decade when every girl learned that beauty was a project, that control over appearance equated to social power, and that preparation for the day was not just a convenience but a ritualistic endeavor. From the moment your eyes open, the priorities are clear. Hairspray is not optional. It is required. Teasing is not just a styling choice. It is survival. Volume is celebrated above symmetry, and the higher the hair, the closer you are to the pinnacle of social and cultural approval. Every strand, every curl, every angle of the bangs is a challenge to gravity and an assertion of identity. And yet, despite the meticulous care and repeated efforts, there is an inherent camaraderie in this struggle. Girls and women alike share the silent understanding that each day's morning routine is a performance, a negotiation with the world that says, "Here I am. I am prepared. I am visible." But hair is only the beginning. The 1980s were a time when the concept of power dressing emerged alongside the rise of professional women striving for respect and recognition in workplaces dominated by men. Shoulder pads were not merely a fashion statement. They were symbolic armor, broadening the silhouette and signaling that the wearer was to be taken seriously. These angular additions to blazers, dresses, and even sweaters created a geometric transformation, a structured version of the female form designed to command attention. It was an era when outward appearance could serve as an assertion of inner confidence, a statement that femininity and authority were not mutually exclusive but could coexist in sharp angles and structured lines. The visual impact of shoulder pads on the body is still iconic today, a reminder that the 1980s taught women to negotiate space in both literal and figurative terms, using fabric and foam as tools for empowerment. Morning routines extended far beyond styling hair or selecting the perfect blazer. Exercise became another arena in which the performance of femininity was enacted. The booming popularity of aerobics, led by figures like Jane Fonda, transformed living rooms across America into neon-colored arenas of effort, movement, and discipline. The act of stretching, kicking, jumping, and sweating was not simply about health. It was a demonstration of commitment to the ideals of beauty, agility, and energy. Exercise videos, VHS tapes, and rhythmic instruction tapes filled homes with the sound of upbeat synth music and vocal encouragement, urging women to sculpt, tone, and elevate themselves both literally and figuratively. By engaging in these routines, participants were not only pursuing physical health but also participating in a shared cultural understanding of what it meant to be a well-groomed, socially successful woman in the 1980s. Diet and nutrition, too, were heavily interwoven with the decade's ideals of femininity. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner were often battles of control, carefully monitored to fit the standards of slimness and decorum. Low-calorie options, sugar substitutes, and diet drinks like Tab were staples of daily life, presenting a constant challenge between desire and discipline. Meals were not just sustenance but part of a larger framework of self-surveillance, a methodical, almost ritualistic management of the body. Every choice, from a cup of low-fat yogurt to a single rice cake, was measured and evaluated, creating a heightened awareness of body image and personal presentation from a very young age. The pursuit of the perfect figure was therefore a continuous project, one that demanded focus, patience, and a willingness to engage with cultural expectations that were both explicit and implied. Alongside diet and exercise, makeup rituals became an essential part of the process. The mall was not merely a place to shop but a cultural arena where young women learned to navigate beauty, social interaction, and self-expression. Department store makeup counters became classrooms, where the application of foundation, blush, eyeshadow, and lipstick was both an art and a lesson in social norms. These experiences taught young women that femininity involved a careful balance of effort, skill, and presentation. Each visit to a counter was a rite of passage, a moment when the abstract concept of femininity was translated into visible, tangible results. And these results were not merely aesthetic. They carried social weight, signifying readiness, compliance with cultural ideals, and the subtle signaling of status among peers. Fashion and accessories further reinforced the structured expectations of the decade. Purses, handbags, and small personal items became symbols of preparedness and social responsibility. The items carried within these bags, from lip balm to tissues to small compacts, represented not only the practicalities of daily life but also the symbolic importance of being ready for any situation, maintaining appearance, and navigating social spaces with confidence. The very act of carrying a purse became a learned skill, an exercise in posture, balance, and awareness. The attention to detail, even in accessories, underscores the pervasive nature of the 1980s focus on femininity. It was a comprehensive, all-encompassing cultural expectation that extended from hair and clothing to diet, exercise, and daily conduct. Even the seemingly mundane act of getting dressed or selecting an outfit carried weight. The clothing choices of the 1980s were deliberate, each garment chosen to convey a message about the wearer's identity, social understanding, and adherence to cultural norms. Layering, color coordination, and attention to fabric and texture were all part of this intricate dance. The wardrobe was not simply a collection of garments but a toolkit for navigating the complex social landscape of schools, workplaces, and public spaces. The effort invested in appearance, from shoes to accessories to the smallest details, reflected a broader cultural message that femininity was active, performative, and, at times, a demonstration of resilience and skill. Throughout the decade, these rituals and practices contributed to a shared sense of community and understanding among women. While the effort could be exhausting, even overwhelming, there was also an unspoken bond in the collective pursuit of ideals. Whether teasing hair, applying makeup, participating in aerobics, or carefully navigating diet and fashion norms, women found themselves connected through shared experience. The challenges of the 1980s, while highly stylized and sometimes absurd, fostered a sense of belonging and mutual recognition, a cultural acknowledgement that achieving the standards of beauty and femininity was both difficult and socially significant. In retrospect, the 1980s emerge as a period of intense cultural focus on appearance, social signaling, and the performance of identity. From the first morning rituals to the late-night reflections in mirrors scented faintly with hairspray and lotion, every action was steeped in cultural expectation. Femininity was not merely an internal quality or an innate trait. It was an elaborate practice, enacted with care, precision, and a willingness to embrace the strange combination of struggle and creativity that defined the decade. It was a time when ambition, beauty, and social acumen were woven together into daily routines, and when success, whether social, personal, or professional, was measured in part by how convincingly one could embody these ideals. So as we step into this time capsule, imagine the smell of Aquanet and neon, the gleam of shoulder pads, the rhythmic thump of aerobics routines echoing through quiet suburban homes, and the quiet satisfaction of a perfectly teased bang or carefully applied blush. The 1980s, with all its color, chaos, and carefully constructed femininity, was a decade where style and effort were inseparable from identity, where mornings began with intention, and where the rituals of appearance carried lessons far beyond fashion. In telling this story, we are not simply recounting trends or fads but exploring a world in which culture, gender, and performance intersected to shape the lives and experiences of countless women, leaving an enduring impression that still resonates today. As we begin our journey into this pastel and aerosol-tinged era, prepare to see the 1980s not just as a time of music videos and mall fashion but as a world of ritualized beauty, carefully engineered confidence, and the persistent, sometimes humorous, struggle to define and perform perfect femininity every single day. From the first blink in the fluorescent morning to the final glance in the mall mirror, the 1980s taught a generation that femininity was something you practiced, something you wore, and something that, once achieved, created a quiet but undeniable power, the power to be seen, to be noticed, and to navigate the world with an attitude built from hairspray, foam, and determination. As we continue our journey into the neon, fluorescent, and hair-sprayed world of the 1980s, today we are diving deep into one of the decade's most iconic cultural phenomena, the obsession with big hair. If you think hair is just hair, think again. In the 1980s, hair was a statement, a declaration, and in many ways, a carefully orchestrated work of art. It was a visible sign of personality, social awareness, and, let us be honest, the willingness to invest in a daily ritual that was equal parts effort and performance. The bigger the hair, the closer you were to the ideal, the closer you were to being seen in the ways that mattered in schools, malls, and social gatherings. Picture this, a suburban bathroom, mid-morning. The counter is crowded with tools, and the air is scented with a mixture of hairspray, mousse, and perhaps a hint of perfume. In the corner, a tall can of Aqua Net stands ready, the undisputed champion of the 1980s hairstyling arsenal. Brushes of all sizes are scattered across the sink, curling irons hum faintly, and the mirror is fogged from a combination of hot water and anticipation. The ritual of achieving the perfect 1980s hairstyle was a delicate dance of preparation, skill, and determination. Each step mattered, and every layer of effort added to a final product that was meant to impress, assert identity, and convey control. The first step in any big hair ritual was teasing. Often misunderstood by today's standards, teasing was not just about adding volume. It was about creating structure, height, and a kind of defiant drama. A fine-tooth comb became an essential weapon, gently lifting small sections of hair from the scalp and backcombing repeatedly to form a base that could withstand the demands of styling and the pull of gravity. The more persistent the teasing, the higher the hair, and the closer one came to achieving a silhouette that defined the era. It was an exercise in patience, endurance, and the subtle art of precision. One wrong stroke, and the hairstyle could collapse or lose its carefully measured shape. Once the teasing was complete, The next stage involved molding the hair into its intended form. Curling irons, rollers, and sometimes even the unconventional tools of home ingenuity were employed to create waves, curls, and shapes that were simultaneously playful and structured. The hair was a canvas, the individual strands brushes, and the goal was an image that was both personal and culturally recognizable. This stage required skill, timing, and attention to detail. Each curl had to be positioned carefully, sometimes pinned, sometimes sprayed, until it held the desired shape. The process was time-consuming, yet for those who mastered it, it provided a sense of accomplishment and empowerment, transforming a mundane morning into a daily artistic performance. No 1980s big hair ritual was complete without the application of mousse or setting lotion. These products, often brightly colored or heavily scented, served as both foundation and fixative, providing the hair with volume, texture, and hold. A generous amount of mousse, applied section by section, would lift the hair from the roots and prepare it for the teasing and curling that followed. Setting lotion, sometimes used in conjunction with heated rollers, ensured that the hairstyle could endure hours of social activity without collapsing under its own weight. The careful layering of products was essential, creating a balance between form and durability. Without these preparations, even the most ambitious teasing efforts could result in a flat, disappointing outcome. Then came the moment everyone remembers: hairspray. Perhaps the most iconic element of the big hair ritual, hairspray was applied liberally, sometimes forming a protective barrier as formidable as armor. The ritual of spraying was a choreography in itself, holding the can at just the right distance, sweeping the nozzle evenly across the hairstyle, and layering coats to create maximum hold without stiffness. The aroma of hairspray became inseparable from the 1980s aesthetic, a signal that effort had been invested and that the hair was now battle-ready for whatever social challenges lay ahead. The resulting style was a triumph of engineering, physics, and cultural awareness, a testament to the wearer's skill and dedication. Beyond the technical aspects, the social significance of big hair cannot be overstated. Hairstyles were not just personal choices. They were markers of social awareness, peer acceptance, and cultural literacy. In schools, malls, and social events, hair signaled status, personality, and sometimes even ambition. Girls with taller, more intricate hairstyles were often perceived as more confident or socially attuned, while simpler styles might be interpreted as casual or understated. In a decade that celebrated visibility and individuality, the act of perfecting a hairstyle was a form of social currency. Hair was a way of saying, without words, "I understand the rules, I embrace the culture, and I am here to participate fully." Big hair rituals also intersected with fashion in fascinating ways. Shoulder pads, bold earrings, and neon clothing complemented elaborate hairstyles, creating a coordinated visual impact that extended from the top of the head to the tip of the shoes. Hairstyles were rarely an isolated element. They were part of a broader, carefully constructed aesthetic. The height, curl, and volume of hair often dictated clothing choices, and vice versa. Accessories, from headbands to scrunchies, became both practical tools and stylistic flourishes, enhancing the silhouette and drawing attention to the face. In this way, the big hair phenomenon was a holistic cultural practice, linking appearance, fashion, and self-expression in a single, coordinated statement. Even the act of maintaining big hair throughout the day required vigilance. A sudden gust of wind, an accidental brush against a doorway, or the natural pull of gravity could threaten hours of preparation. Women and girls learned to carry emergency hairpins, small combs, and travel-size hairspray, ensuring that their creation could survive social interactions, dances, or school assemblies. The hairstyle became a living, interactive element of the day, requiring attention and occasional intervention. In this sense, hair was not static. It was dynamic, a constant reminder that effort, care, and awareness were inseparable from appearance. Cultural influences, from music videos to television shows, reinforced these practices. Icons like Madonna, Cyndi Lauper, and the cast of popular teen movies demonstrated the power of big, bold hairstyles, showing that hair could express rebellion, creativity, or aspirational glamour. Young women sought to emulate these stars, translating what they saw on screens into their own daily routines. The replication of celebrity hairstyles was not mere mimicry. It was a way of participating in a larger cultural dialogue, signaling alignment with trends, values, and aesthetic ideals that defined the decade. Hair became both personal expression and social negotiation, a visible connection to a broader cultural conversation. The psychological dimension of big hair rituals is also significant. The process of styling, teasing, curling, and spraying was meditative in a sense, a time when focus, precision, and care translated into visible results. The final look brought a sense of accomplishment, confidence, and readiness. In a decade that often equated appearance with opportunity, the successful completion of a hairstyle could influence self-perception, mood, and social interactions. The ritual itself, repeated daily, instilled discipline, patience, and an understanding of the relationship between effort and presentation. Even today, looking back at photographs, movies, and television from the 1980s, the impact of big hair is undeniable. It represented a cultural moment in which visibility, self-expression, and meticulous effort intersected. Hairstyles were statements, both playful and serious, and they communicated a great deal about the wearer's identity, creativity, and social awareness. The big hair ritual was not simply about vanity. It was a complex cultural practice, blending art, fashion, psychology, and social signaling into a daily, highly performative activity. So, as we explore this fascinating aspect of the 1980s, picture the hairspray clouds, the teasing combs, the curling irons humming in suburban bathrooms, and the triumphant reveal before a mirror that reflects hours of careful work. Big hair was, in every sense, a performance, a blend of science, art, and social knowledge. It was preparation, presentation, and power rolled into one, creating a silhouette that demanded attention, expressed individuality, and connected participants to a broader cultural moment. The taller the hair, the stronger the statement, and in the 1980s, there was no such thing as too much when it came to volume, height, and presence. In understanding these rituals, we gain insight not just into aesthetics, but into the culture, expectations, and daily lives of women in the 1980s. Hair was a canvas, a tool, and a badge of cultural literacy. It was the beginning of a conversation, a signal of identity, and a testament to creativity and perseverance. The big hair rituals of the 1980s continue to captivate our imagination today, reminding us that appearance, effort, and cultural awareness were deeply intertwined, and that a carefully styled curl could speak volumes without uttering a single word. As we move deeper into the neon-soaked, audacious world of the 1980s, another defining element comes into focus: makeup and cosmetic routines. While big hair drew attention to the silhouette, makeup added color, definition, and unmistakable personality to every face. In the 1980s, makeup was not subtle. It was bold, expressive, and unapologetic, a tool to communicate confidence, individuality, and alignment with cultural trends. From neon eyeshadows to sculpted cheekbones, every stroke of makeup was part of a larger ritual of self-presentation and social signaling, often demanding hours of careful preparation. Picture a teenage girl's bedroom in 1985. Sunlight glints off compact mirrors, plastic trays filled with colorful tubes, jars, and palettes. The scent of perfume, lipstick, and powder hangs in the air, mingling with a faint trace of hairspray from the bathroom next door. Makeup was more than routine. It was a performance, a process requiring focus, skill, and creativity. Each morning began with a deliberate plan, a vision of the face as a canvas, and the understanding that the final look could influence confidence and social perception. The eyes were arguably the most dramatic feature. Neon eyeshadows in blues, pinks, purples, and greens layered across the lids, sometimes extending toward the brow bone, creating a bold statement. Brushes of varying sizes ensured proper blending, though vibrancy trumped subtlety. Eyeliner, often thick and extending in wings or geometric shapes, framed the eyes, while mascara added length, curl, and drama. Every application required creativity and technical skill to ensure colors were vibrant yet balanced, expressive yet cohesive. Cheeks and contours were equally vital. Blush in bright pinks or deep corals highlighted cheekbones, sculpting the face, while powdered bronzers deepened contours and added dimension. High blush paired with strong eye makeup became a visual signature of the decade, communicating energy, style, and playful rebellion. Lips were another defining element. Lipsticks in hot pinks, bright reds, and occasional purples were carefully applied, often lined first for fullness, sometimes topped with glossy layers. Smooth, even lips were essential. Each shade conveyed personality, mood, and adherence to cultural trends. Skin preparation underpinned it all. Foundations, primers, and powders created a flawless base, while emerging techniques in contouring and highlighting emphasized bone structure and added artistic flair. Skincare and makeup were inseparable. Smooth, prepared skin enhanced color vibrancy and longevity. The preparation itself became ritualistic, transforming mornings into meditative, empowering practices. Makeup did not exist in isolation. It harmonized with fashion and social life. Bold eyes or lips complemented neon clothing, shoulder pads, and oversized jackets, creating coordinated visual statements. Accessories like scrunchies, earrings, and headbands worked in concert with makeup to reinforce identity and visibility. In schools, malls, and parties, makeup became a social language, signaling taste, confidence, cultural awareness, and occasional rebellion. Media played a key role. Music videos, television, and magazines showcased celebrities like Madonna and Cyndi Lauper, inspiring emulation. Young women learned to mix colors, experiment with techniques, and adapt trends to their own faces, blending prescriptive guidance with personal expression. Maintaining these looks required vigilance. Reapplication, touch-ups, and emergency kits with small palettes, lipsticks, and powders ensured that the carefully constructed appearance endured throughout the day. Makeup was more than cosmetic. It was a visible statement of care, effort, and social engagement. Psychologically, these routines built confidence. Choosing colors, blending, and sculpting offered a sense of control and mastery over appearance. The final look conveyed readiness, empowerment, and social presence. Makeup in the 1980s was not vanity. It was self-expression, ritual, and a performance of identity. Looking back, the decade's makeup is instantly recognizable, bold, bright, and unapologetic. Eyes, lips, and sculpted cheeks became a language, conveying confidence, creativity, and cultural literacy. Every stroke of color carried meaning, connecting individuals to trends while allowing room for personal interpretation. Makeup routines revealed a world where daily effort intersected with artistry, fashion, and psychology. They bridged the personal and social, turning everyday actions into performances of visibility, creativity, and confidence. Today, the makeup of the 1980s continues to fascinate, reminding us that even a single brushstroke could carry social, emotional, and cultural weight. It was a decade of fearless expression, where every color, contour, and glossy lip told a story, transforming the act of applying makeup into a daily celebration of individuality and participation in a vibrant cultural moment. As we dive deeper into the colorful and energetic world of the 1980s, one cannot ignore the era's truly unforgettable fashion and clothing trends. The 1980s were a time of excess, experimentation, and bold expression, where clothing became an unmistakable badge of identity. Just as makeup amplified personality, fashion broadcasted it to the world. Each outfit was a statement, a carefully curated combination of style, attitude, and cultural awareness. From oversized blazers to neon leg warmers, the clothing choices of the decade reflected a society eager to experiment, redefine norms, and celebrate individuality. Walking down the streets of any major city in the 1980s, one would see a kaleidoscope of styles, each telling its own story. Shoulder pads dominated women's blazers and dresses, lending a sense of power and confidence to the wearer. The exaggerated silhouettes created an air of authority, giving women a visual presence that complemented the rising participation of women in professional and corporate spaces. Paired with tailored skirts or bold trousers, these blazers projected ambition and sophistication while also embracing the decade's love for dramatic visual statements. Men, too, experimented with sharper cuts and brighter colors, often adopting double-breasted jackets with padded shoulders that echoed the same sense of strength and style. Denim emerged as a true cultural icon of the decade, with acid washes, rips, and embellishments defining the casual aesthetic. Jeans became more than just practical attire, they were a canvas for self-expression. High-waisted cuts elongated the legs, while skinny or tapered fits added a sleek modernity to everyday outfits. Denim jackets, sometimes adorned with pins, patches, or rolled sleeves, became signature pieces for both teenagers and adults. The fabric itself symbolized versatility, rebellion, and creative adaptation, bridging the gap between street culture, music influence, and mainstream fashion. Neon colors dominated the visual landscape, infiltrating everything from tops and leggings to accessories and outerwear. Bright pinks, electric blues, and fluorescent yellows were more than mere decoration, they communicated energy, confidence, and a willingness to stand out. Layering these colors with bold prints, geometric patterns, or mismatched combinations created looks that were instantly recognizable as 1980s. The era celebrated maximalism, encouraging people to push boundaries and embrace visual contrast. Wearing neon was not just about fashion, it was a statement of cultural participation, a way to show that you were part of the vibrant pulse of the decade. Athletic-inspired clothing also gained massive popularity, largely influenced by the explosion of aerobics and fitness culture. Leg warmers, spandex tights, crop tops, and sweatbands became daily staples, reflecting an era obsessed with movement, energy, and a celebration of physicality. Fitness videos and aerobics classes introduced the idea that clothing could be both functional and fashionable, blurring the lines between sportswear and streetwear. Sneakers became status symbols, with bright colors, distinctive logos, and high-top designs emphasizing individuality while maintaining comfort. This fusion of athleticism and fashion showcased the decade's fascination with dynamic lifestyles and self-presentation. Accessories in the 1980s were just as crucial as the clothing itself. Oversized earrings, chunky necklaces, layered bracelets, and bold belts completed every outfit, adding texture, contrast, and visual interest. Scrunchies, headbands, and fingerless gloves were small but iconic touches that transformed simple outfits into memorable ensembles. Sunglasses with exaggerated shapes and colored lenses were both functional and expressive, reinforcing the idea that every detail of appearance mattered. Accessories were not just optional, they were essential elements of communication, conveying personality, creativity, and alignment with contemporary trends. Pop culture heavily influenced fashion, with musicians, actors, and television stars setting the tone. Madonna, Prince, Michael Jackson, and Cyndi Lauper exemplified the fusion of music and fashion, inspiring fans to adopt similar looks. Music videos became style manuals, showing how to layer textures, mix colors, and combine bold accessories. Television shows, teen movies, and commercials reinforced these trends, creating a shared visual language across urban and suburban spaces alike. Fashion was no longer confined to the runway. It was accessible, immediate, and participatory. Teens and adults alike could recreate looks at home, using their own creativity to interpret the inspiration they saw on screens and in magazines. One cannot discuss 1980s fashion without mentioning the importance of brand visibility. Logos and designer labels became aspirational symbols, appearing on t-shirts, jackets, and sneakers. Owning a recognizable brand signified taste, economic awareness, and social positioning. However, the decade balanced this commercial influence with creativity, as customizing clothing with paint, pins, or unique combinations allowed individuals to express originality. Fashion became a conversation between consumer culture and personal creativity, reflecting both conformity to trends and divergence through individuality. The 1980s also saw experimentation with texture and material. Leather, satin, velvet, and lace added dimension to outfits, while metallic fabrics reflected the decade's fascination with shine and spectacle. Layering different textures created depth, visual intrigue, and an almost theatrical quality to daily attire. Evening wear emphasized glamour, with sequins, glitter, and ruffles signaling both confidence and playfulness. The tactile nature of clothing became a tool for storytelling, allowing wearers to communicate mood, status, and personality through touch and appearance alike. Footwear deserves special attention as well. Pumps, ankle boots, neon sneakers, and even brightly colored sandals complemented the boldness of outfits. Shoes were not merely functional. They were extensions of style. High heels emphasized power and elegance, while athletic shoes emphasized energy and urban cool. Choosing the right pair was an essential part of the outfit, completing the visual narrative from head to toe. In many ways, footwear became a silent communicator of taste, lifestyle, and identity, reinforcing the message conveyed by every other piece of clothing. The layering of clothing was another hallmark of the decade. T-shirts over long-sleeved tops, vests over shirts, and skirts over leggings exemplified a playful yet calculated approach to styling. Layers created opportunities for color mixing, textural contrast, and visual experimentation. They allowed individuals to adapt their outfits to social settings, weather, or mood, while maintaining a coherent sense of style. Each combination reflected intention, creativity, and attention to detail, reinforcing the idea that fashion was an interactive, dynamic process rather than a passive choice. Reflecting on 1980s fashion today, it is clear that the era embraced audacity, creativity, and self-expression. Clothing was more than protection from the elements. It was a communicative tool, a cultural statement, and a reflection of individual identity. Every neon legging, oversized blazer, and layered accessory told a story of energy, experimentation, and participation in a broader social conversation. The trends were bold because the people were bold, and the decade rewarded those willing to experiment, stand out, and celebrate visibility. Ultimately, the fashion and clothing trends of the 1980s remind us of the power of appearance to influence mood, social perception, and self-expression. The decade's love for bold silhouettes, vibrant colors, and carefully chosen accessories created a visual culture that continues to captivate today. Through clothing, individuals could navigate social hierarchies, express creativity, and communicate identity in ways both playful and meaningful. The 1980s were not shy, they were audacious, expressive, and unforgettable, leaving behind a legacy of style that still inspires designers, enthusiasts, and storytellers around the world. As we move deeper into the vibrant 1980s, it becomes impossible to ignore the transformative role of popular music in shaping the culture, identity, and daily lives of people across the globe. Music was no longer just a form of entertainment, it became a vehicle for self-expression, social connection, and even political statements. The 1980s were a decade defined by diversity in sound, innovation in production, and the rise of an unprecedented visual culture that paired music with striking imagery. Whether you were dancing to synthpop in a neon-lit club, rocking out to hair metal at a concert, or connecting with socially conscious lyrics on the radio, music was a central thread weaving together the decade's unique tapestry. One of the defining features of 1980s music was the emergence of the music video as a revolutionary medium. With the launch of MTV in 1981, songs were no longer heard, they were seen. Artists became visual storytellers, using choreography, fashion, and cinematic techniques to complement their sound. Michael Jackson's groundbreaking videos like Thriller and Beat It transformed him into a global icon, demonstrating how visuals could amplify the cultural impact of music. Similarly, Madonna's provocative and bold videos established her as a symbol of empowerment, reinvention, and style. Music videos were not just promotional tools, they were cultural events, shaping fashion, dance, and even societal attitudes toward gender and identity. Synthesizers and electronic instruments defined much of the decade's sound, giving rise to genres like synthpop, new wave, and electronic dance music. Bands like Depeche Mode, Aha, and Duran Duran introduced a futuristic and vibrant sound that felt perfectly in tune with the era's fascination with technology, neon colors, and bold experimentation. These sounds were not just background noise, they were immersive experiences that reflected optimism, tension, and the complex emotions of the time. Synths allowed musicians to explore textures, layers, and rhythms previously impossible with traditional instruments, offering listeners a sonic adventure that mirrored the visual boldness of the decade. At the same time, rock and its subgenres flourished with an energy that seemed larger than life. Hair metal bands like Bon Jovi, Motley Crue, and Def Leppard delivered arena-sized anthems with soaring vocals, electrifying guitar solos, and visually flamboyant performances. The genre celebrated excess, confidence, and performance, often pairing music with fashion statements like teased hair, leather jackets, and spandex pants. Punk and alternative rock, on the other hand, offered a rebellious counterpoint, with bands like The Cure, The Smiths, and The Clash giving voice to societal frustrations, individualism, and emotional authenticity. Music in the 1980s was a playground of contrasts, where theatricality coexisted with introspection, and commercial success often met underground experimentation. Hip-hop also began to carve its place in mainstream consciousness during this decade. Emerging from the streets of New York City, early hip-hop artists like Run D.M.C., LL Cool J, and Public Enemy used rhythm, poetry, and beatboxing to articulate the realities of urban life, social inequality, and personal ambition. The genre was not just a musical form, it was a social movement, giving marginalized voices a platform and influencing fashion, language, and attitude. Adidas sneakers, Kangol hats, and gold chains became emblematic of the hip-hop identity, demonstrating once again how music and style were inseparable in the 1980s cultural landscape. The influence of music extended beyond personal style into broader cultural trends. Dance became a major outlet for expression, from breakdancing in city streets to aerobics classes inspired by popular hits. Clubs, concerts, and even school dances became stages for community and experimentation, where teenagers and young adults could embody the rhythms, attitudes, and personas suggested by their favorite artists. Music dictated energy, movement, and mood, creating shared experiences that transcended social and geographic boundaries. It was not merely a backdrop to life, it was a driving force shaping daily interactions and cultural memory. Pop stars and bands became trendsetters, influencing everything from hairstyle to clothing choices. Fans emulated their idols' outfits, hair colors, and accessories, creating a visual language that signaled membership in cultural movements. The interplay between fashion and music reached unprecedented levels, with styles like punk leather, glam metal, and new wave kitsch serving as extensions of musical identity. Music, therefore, was not only heard but worn, danced, and performed, embedding itself in every aspect of life. Each song, concert, or video became a multi-sensory event, blending audio, visual, and kinesthetic experience into a holistic cultural phenomenon. Social issues and political commentary also found expression through 1980s music. Artists used their platforms to address war, poverty, discrimination, and environmental concerns. Songs like We Are the World and concerts such as Live Aid demonstrated music's capacity to unify people, for causes greater than themselves. Lyrics and performances became calls to action, reflecting the era's tension between consumerist exuberance and social consciousness. Music gave voice to hope, anger, and awareness, proving that entertainment could simultaneously inspire fun and foster responsibility. Technological advances reshaped the way music was produced, distributed, and consumed. The introduction of digital recording, synthesizers, and drum machines allowed for unprecedented experimentation in sound design. Cassette tapes, vinyl records, and the compact disc revolutionized accessibility, allowing music to reach new audiences in their homes, cars, and personal spaces. Radio stations and music channels amplified reach, while the growing culture of mixtapes encouraged personal curation and sharing of favorite songs. These developments democratized music consumption, creating intimate yet widely shared experiences and laying the groundwork for the digital music revolutions of the future. Fan culture flourished during this decade as well. From fan clubs and newsletters to posters plastered on bedroom walls, young people engaged with music on a deeply personal level. Concert attendance, fan memorabilia, and music-themed clothing allowed listeners to externalize their passion, creating communities bonded by shared taste. Music became a lens through which people explored identity, belonging, and aspiration. The connection between artist and audience was immediate, tangible, and often deeply emotional, making the 1980s a period of intense musical intimacy. Globalization further expanded the influence of 1980s music. Western pop, rock, and hip-hop found audiences in Europe, Asia, and Latin America, while local adaptations and cross-cultural collaborations created hybrid genres that resonated worldwide. Artists toured internationally, music videos were broadcast globally, and popular songs transcended language barriers. The decade demonstrated how music could function as a universal language, connecting people across continents while simultaneously reflecting local culture and values. In retrospect, the 1980s solidified the idea that music was more than a soundtrack. It was a cultural engine, a visual phenomenon, and a social connector. It shaped attitudes, inspired fashion, guided movement, and communicated identity. Every genre, from synthpop to rock, from hip-hop to new wave, contributed to a rich, multifaceted sonic landscape that continues to influence artists today. Music did not just reflect the era it defined it, becoming inseparable from the bold colors, daring fashion, and energetic lifestyles that characterized the decade. Ultimately, the popular music of the 1980s reminds us of the transformative power of sound. It illustrates how rhythm, melody, and performance can inspire creativity, forge community, and communicate identity on a global scale. The decade's musical legacy remains enduring, not only in the songs that still resonate but in the cultural attitudes, styles, and visual languages it helped create. In the 1980s, music was alive, vibrant, and omnipresent, a force that shaped not only what people heard but how they dressed, moved, and connected with one another. As we continue our journey through the 1980s, it becomes impossible to ignore the powerful role of movies and pop culture icons in shaping the decade's identity. This was a time when cinema, television, and celebrity culture intersected in unprecedented ways, giving rise to icons whose influence extended far beyond the silver screen. From blockbuster hits to cult classics, from action heroes to teen idols, the 1980s defined a new era in entertainment where imagination, spectacle, and personality merged into a cultural force that captured the hearts and minds of millions worldwide. The 1980s are often remembered as the golden age of blockbuster cinema, a period where directors and studios harnessed cutting-edge technology, ambitious storytelling, and star power to create films that became instant cultural phenomena. Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, and John Hughes were among the visionaries whose work left an indelible mark on the decade. E.T. The extraterrestrial captured the wonder of childhood and the emotional resonance of connection across differences, while Indiana Jones offered thrilling adventures that combined history, mythology, and relentless excitement. Each movie was not only an entertainment experience but a shared cultural touchstone, creating lasting memories for audiences who flocked to theaters in droves. Action movies defined the decade's sense of heroism, style, and escapism. Stars like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, and Bruce Willis became household names, embodying larger-than-life characters whose courage, determination, and physicality defined what it meant to be an action hero. Films such as The Terminator, Die Hard, and Rambo showcased intense action sequences, technological fascination, and moral dilemmas, providing audiences with adrenaline-fueled experiences while exploring themes of resilience and survival. These heroes became symbols of power and determination, inspiring generations with their unforgettable performances and quotable lines. At the same time, teen films and coming-of-age stories captured the emotional landscape of adolescence in ways that resonated across generations. John Hughes films like The Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off offered a window into the challenges, humor, and triumphs of high school life. These films spoke directly to teenagers, exploring identity, friendship, romance, and rebellion with honesty and heart. They also set the stage for the rise of teen idols, actors who became symbols of youth culture and aspirational lifestyles, influencing fashion, speech, and social trends among young audiences. Pop culture icons extended far beyond actors. Musicians, athletes, and even fictional characters became globally recognized figures whose images appeared on posters, merchandise, and television screens. Michael Jackson, already dominating the music scene, also became a cinematic presence through his innovative videos and performances, while Princess Diana, Madonna, and pop stars like Cyndi Lauper transcended their respective fields to become cultural phenomena. These figures did not just entertain, they represented ideals, emotions, and attitudes, providing role models, aspirational figures, or sometimes cautionary tales for the public. The decade's fascination with fantasy and science fiction also shaped pop culture in unique ways. Movies like Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, and The Never-Ending Story combined imaginative storytelling with memorable characters and innovative special effects. These films transported audiences to worlds where anything was possible, inspiring creativity and wonder while reflecting contemporary concerns about technology, identity, and adventure. Iconic characters like Marty McFly, Slimer, and Falcor became enduring symbols of childhood imagination, curiosity, and courage, embedded in the collective memory of those who experienced them. Animation also gained prominence as a form of cultural influence. Disney's animated films such as The Little Mermaid and The Fox and the Hound revived interest in family-friendly storytelling, while Japanese anime began gaining international attention, introducing audiences to new visual styles and imaginative narratives. Animated characters became part of daily life through toys, television shows, and merchandise, creating immersive experiences that extended the magic of storytelling beyond the screen. Fashion and style were inseparable from pop culture in the 1980s. Celebrities and movie characters became trendsetters, inspiring hairstyles, clothing, and accessories that were emulated by fans around the world. Shoulder pads, leg warmers, leather jackets, and neon colors were not just fashion choices, they were cultural statements, signaling membership in a vibrant and dynamic era. Films and celebrities provided templates for personal expression, influencing how people dressed, moved, and presented themselves in social settings, from school hallways to city streets. Television also played a crucial role in creating pop culture icons. Sitcoms, dramas, and variety shows introduced audiences to characters and personalities that became part of everyday conversation. Shows like Miami Vice and Cheers combined humor, drama, and social commentary while making actors and characters synonymous with style, attitude, and cultural trends. TV stars often became cross-media icons, appearing in commercials, interviews, and even music videos, reinforcing the interconnected nature of 1980s pop culture. The decade was also defined by the rise of franchises and merchandising, solidifying the connection between entertainment and consumer culture. Films like Star Wars, Transformers, and Ghostbusters were not just movies, they were brand experiences that included toys, clothing, lunchboxes, and posters. This strategy allowed audiences to engage with beloved characters and stories beyond the theater, creating personal, tangible connections to pop culture. Collectibles, memorabilia, and themed experiences allowed fans to immerse themselves fully in the worlds they loved, making entertainment a multi-sensory, interactive phenomenon. Pop culture icons often reflected broader societal themes and aspirations. Heroes and protagonists embodied courage, innovation, and moral clarity, while villains personified societal fears and challenges. Celebrities provided models of success, rebellion, and creativity, inspiring audiences to dream bigger and express themselves authentically. Even the storytelling itself offered lessons in perseverance, friendship, and self-discovery, reinforcing the idea that entertainment could entertain and educate simultaneously. Global influence amplified the reach of 1980s pop culture. Movies, television shows, and celebrities crossed borders, shaping trends in Europe, Asia, and Latin America. Fans worldwide embraced the same films, music, and fashion, creating a shared global experience that transcended language and geography. This interconnectedness allowed cultural phenomena to ripple across continents, influencing attitudes, aspirations, and identity on an international scale. Reflecting on the decade, the movies and pop culture icons of the 1980s were more than entertainment, they were cultural cornerstones. They shaped style, inspired imagination, fostered connection, and created lasting emotional bonds with audiences. From blockbuster adventures to teen dramas, from music legends to animated characters, the era demonstrated how entertainment could influence the way people lived, thought, and expressed themselves. The decade's legacy continues today, influencing contemporary films, fashion, music, and celebrity culture, reminding us of the enduring power of storytelling and iconic figures. In the end, the 1980s remind us that pop culture is a living, breathing entity. It entertains, inspires, and connects us, while also reflecting the values, hopes, and fears of its time. Movies and cultural icons of the era were more than stars on a screen, they were symbols of creativity, aspiration, and identity. They helped define a decade, leaving a lasting imprint on society and shaping the ways we experience culture even decades later. The magic of 1980s pop culture lies not only in its nostalgia but in its ongoing influence, proving that the power of storytelling and iconic figures is timeless. The 1980s were a decade of bold expression, audacious choices, and cultural experimentation. And nowhere was this more evident than in fashion and style. Clothing, hairstyles, and accessories were not merely about utility, they were statements, symbols, and an integral part of identity. The decade's fashion trends were as diverse and dynamic as the music, movies, and pop culture icons that defined it, creating a visual language that communicated individuality, social affiliation, and creative daring. To truly understand the 1980s, one must examine the flamboyant, eclectic, and sometimes contradictory style choices that became hallmarks of the era. At the heart of 1980s fashion was the idea of excess. Bold colors, exaggerated silhouettes, and eye-catching accessories dominated wardrobes across continents. Shoulder pads became an iconic element, transforming jackets and blazers into powerful statements of confidence and authority, particularly for women entering corporate spaces in larger numbers. Simultaneously, oversized sweaters, neon tights, and leg warmers were embraced by youth culture, symbolizing rebellion, playfulness, and engagement with the energetic rhythms of the era. The interplay of extravagance and function created a unique aesthetic that was impossible to ignore. Denim, a fabric long associated with casual wear, took on a cultural significance of its own in the 1980s. Acid wash jeans, jean jackets, and denim-on-denim combinations became global trends, embodying a sense of rebellion and youthful cool. Rock stars, movie characters, and everyday teenagers adopted denim as a canvas for personal expression, pairing it with pins, patches, or layered accessories to signal taste, affiliation, or attitude. The versatility of denim allowed it to cross class, age, and geographic boundaries, becoming both a practical material and a cultural symbol of the decade. Hairstyles in the 1980s were equally daring. Big hair, voluminous curls, and teased bangs reflected the decade's preference for dramatic expression and individuality. Men and women alike experimented with layers, color, and texture, influenced by music genres ranging from punk and new wave to glam rock and pop. Hairstyles were not simply cosmetic, they communicated personality, affiliation, and identity. From Madonna's iconic platinum curls to rock musicians' long, wild manes, hair became a medium through which the spirit of the 1980s could be seen, heard, and felt. Accessories played a crucial role in completing the look of the decade. Statement jewelry, fingerless gloves, chunky belts, and bold sunglasses added layers of visual interest and flair. Even seemingly small details, such as scrunchies, headbands, or neon shoelaces, conveyed creativity, rebellion, or trend consciousness. Fashion was an immersive experience, where each accessory contributed to a larger narrative about who the wearer was, what they valued, and how they engaged with the cultural currents of the time. The music scene had a profound influence on fashion trends. Pop stars like Madonna, Cyndi Lauper, and Michael Jackson were not just musicians, they were trendsetters whose clothing choices, stage costumes, and personal style inspired fans to emulate their looks. Punk and new wave subcultures introduced leather jackets, studded belts, and eclectic mixes of fabrics, creating edgy, anti-establishment styles. Meanwhile, hip-hop culture was beginning to emerge, emphasizing tracksuits, sneakers, and athletic-inspired streetwear that would eventually become a global phenomenon. Music and fashion were inextricably linked, with each influencing the other in a feedback loop of creativity and cultural resonance. Workwear also evolved in the 1980s, reflecting broader societal shifts. As women entered the workforce in greater numbers, power dressing emerged, characterized by tailored suits, structured skirts, and commanding silhouettes. This style combined practicality with authority, allowing women to navigate professional spaces while asserting presence and confidence. Power dressing was not merely clothing, it was a visual articulation of ambition, resilience, and the changing dynamics of gender in society. Sports and leisure wear influenced everyday fashion in unprecedented ways. Tracksuits, sneakers, and casual wear became mainstream, reflecting the decade's emphasis on comfort, performance, and lifestyle branding. Athletes like Magic Johnson, John McEnroe, and other sports icons became style influencers, showcasing ways to merge practicality with style. The merging of athletic wear with casual fashion foreshadowed trends that would dominate later decades, illustrating the 1980s as a crucible for experimentation and integration of diverse fashion elements. Pop culture, cinema, and television further amplified the reach of fashion trends. Movies like Flashdance introduced off-the-shoulder sweaters, leg warmers, and layered accessories into mainstream consciousness, while TV shows like Dynasty showcased glamorous, ostentatious outfits that set aspirational benchmarks for audiences. Film and television did not merely reflect trends, they actively created and circulated them, demonstrating the symbiotic relationship between entertainment and style. Color played a defining role in 1980s fashion. Neon shades, bright primaries, and unexpected combinations conveyed energy, optimism, and creativity. Color was used not only for visual impact but also to communicate mood, affiliation, or personality. From fluorescent pink jackets to lime green sneakers, bold hues were embraced unapologetically, reinforcing the decade's philosophy of expression without restraint. Patterns, too, were eclectic. Geometric shapes, abstract designs, and animal prints appeared across clothing, accessories, and footwear, creating visually stimulating and memorable aesthetics. Footwear trends also reflected the decade's experimental nature. Sneakers became cultural symbols, with brands like Nike and Reebok introducing high-top models, vibrant colors, and signature styles that transcended athletics to influence everyday fashion. High heels, pumps, and boots became statements of sophistication and glamour, particularly when paired with power suits or party attire. Shoes were not simply functional, they were central to the self-expression of the era, completing ensembles and signaling cultural literacy and awareness. Children and teens were deeply influenced by these trends, often using fashion as a means of identity formation and social signaling. Popular cartoon characters, music icons, and movie heroes appeared on clothing, backpacks, and accessories, creating a visual landscape saturated with cultural references. Young people could express fandom, personality, and aspiration through their clothing choices, making fashion a medium of communication, creativity, and social negotiation. Even subcultures and niche communities found their distinct fashion voices. Goth, punk, and alternative scenes experimented with black leather, spikes, lace, and unconventional hairstyles, challenging mainstream aesthetics while contributing to the decade's rich stylistic diversity. Each subgroup not only embraced distinctive clothing but also created social and cultural networks around shared visual codes, illustrating how fashion could be both personal and communal, both expressive and unifying. Reflecting on the 1980s, it becomes clear that fashion and style were not merely superficial concerns, they were deeply intertwined with identity, culture, and social change. Clothing, hair, accessories, and colors provided a medium through which people could communicate individuality, status, and affiliation. The decade encouraged experimentation, audacity, and the celebration of difference, leaving a legacy that continues to influence contemporary fashion. Today, the vibrant colors, bold silhouettes, and eclectic mixes of the 1980s remain iconic, demonstrating how style can encapsulate the spirit of a time, inspire creativity, and foster lasting cultural memory. The magic of 1980s fashion lies in its unapologetic embrace of self-expression. From the streets to the silver screen, from boardrooms to dance floors, clothing and style served as both personal statement and cultural mirror. They reflected the optimism, energy, and ambition of a decade unafraid to stand out, experiment, and redefine norms. The trends of the 1980s remind us that fashion is never just about clothes, it is about identity, creativity, and the enduring human desire to communicate who we are to the world. The 1980s was a decade of rapid technological innovation, a period when gadgets began to enter everyday life in ways that would forever change how people worked, played, and communicated. From the rise of personal computers to the popularity of gaming consoles and portable electronics, technology was no longer confined to laboratories or large corporations. It became personal, immediate, and transformative. The innovations of this decade laid the groundwork for the digital world we inhabit today, making the 1980s a pivotal era for tech enthusiasts, consumers, and anyone curious about the intersection of convenience, entertainment, and imagination. Personal computers became the hallmark of the decade, revolutionizing the way people approached work, education, and leisure. Brands like Apple, IBM, and Commodore introduced machines that were powerful yet accessible, allowing families, students, and small businesses to harness computing power that had once been the exclusive domain of corporations and universities. Computers like the Commodore 64 and the Apple I were not just tools, they were gateways to creativity, problem-solving, and exploration. People learned programming, played games, and experimented with digital art, all while becoming part of a growing community of tech pioneers. Gaming technology also surged in popularity during the 1980s. Home consoles like the Nintendo Entertainment System (NES), Sega Master System, and Atari 2600 brought interactive entertainment directly into living rooms. Arcade culture flourished, with iconic games such as Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, and Space Invaders captivating audiences worldwide. These games were more than mere amusement, they fostered competition, socialization, and even early esports communities. The combination of home consoles and arcades created a cultural phenomenon, making gaming an integral part of youth culture and a defining feature of the decade. Portable electronics emerged as one of the most exciting frontiers of the 1980s. Walkmans, introduced by Sony, revolutionized music consumption by allowing people to carry their favorite songs anywhere, creating a personal soundtrack to daily life. Portable radios, cassette players, and early boomboxes made music not only accessible but social, with shared listening experiences in public spaces becoming common. These devices reflected the era's growing desire for mobility, personalization, and constant connectivity, setting a precedent for future generations of portable technology. Video technology also made a significant impact. VCRs videocassette recorders became household staples, allowing families to record television programs, rent movies, and curate their own entertainment experiences. Blockbuster video rental stores became cultural hubs, creating new forms of leisure and social engagement. VHS technology empowered people to watch content on their own schedules, signaling a shift from passive consumption to interactive control over media, a concept that continues to shape streaming culture today. The 1980s also witnessed the early proliferation of consumer electronics designed for productivity and convenience. Calculators, fax machines, and early word processors became integral tools in offices and homes. These devices, once cumbersome and specialized, became sleek, portable, and user-friendly, transforming how people managed tasks, communicated, and processed information. Technology was increasingly seen as a means to streamline life, save time, and enhance efficiency, creating a cultural shift toward embracing innovation in daily routines. Telecommunication technology began evolving rapidly as well. Cordless phones, answering machines, and the first mobile phones began to appear, though they were still considered luxury items. The idea of personal mobility and communication, once purely speculative, became tangible, hinting at the global connectivity that would define later decades. Even in this early stage, the 1980s laid the foundation for a world where information and communication could travel with individuals, bridging distances and changing expectations about availability and immediacy. Photography and imaging technology also made leaps forward. The 1980s saw widespread adoption of compact film cameras, instant cameras like Polaroids, and early camcorders, allowing people to document their lives with unprecedented ease. Capturing moments became an everyday activity, and photography evolved from a professional or hobbyist pursuit into a shared cultural practice. Images could be instantly produced, displayed, and shared among friends and family, reinforcing personal memories while also shaping social interactions and visual storytelling. The decade's fascination with science fiction and futuristic ideals influenced the design and imagination surrounding technology. Computers, video games, and gadgets were often seen as extensions of human potential, opening possibilities that had once seemed purely fantastical. Popular films like Tron and Back to the Future showcased visions of digital landscapes, hoverboards, and personal devices, inspiring audiences to imagine a future in which technology could transform everyday life. Fiction and reality intertwined, creating cultural momentum for experimentation and adoption of new devices. Educational technology also began to take shape, reflecting the growing belief that early exposure to computers and digital tools was essential for the next generation. Schools introduced computer labs, programming classes, and educational software, giving students hands-on experiences with the machines that would later become ubiquitous. These initiatives democratized access to technology, fostering curiosity, creativity, and skill development, while preparing young people for a world that increasingly depended on digital literacy. Electronic music and synthesizers reflected the convergence of technology and artistic expression. Devices like the Yamaha DX7, Roland TR-808 drum machine, and Casio keyboards enabled musicians to experiment with new sounds and compositions, creating genres that defined the 1980s, including synthpop, new wave, and electronic dance music. Technology empowered creativity, turning tools into instruments that could be explored in both professional studios and bedroom setups, blurring the lines between amateur and expert. Wearable technology also began to emerge in experimental forms. Digital watches with calculators, LED displays, and alarm features became fashionable and functional accessories. These devices, once novelties, signaled a growing fascination with combining utility and personal style, foreshadowing future trends in smartwatches and wearable tech. The 1980s demonstrated that technology could be both practical and aspirational, enhancing lifestyle while also serving as a status symbol or fashion statement. Robotics and home automation captured imaginations, even if they remained largely aspirational. Toy robots, programmable kits, and early concepts of smart devices fascinated both children and adults, reflecting a broader cultural fascination with machines, artificial intelligence, and automated systems. While the practical applications were limited, these technologies shaped expectations, creating a sense that human life could be increasingly augmented by intelligent, responsive tools. In retrospect, the technology and gadgets of the 1980s were more than consumer products. They were cultural artifacts that reflected the era's optimism, curiosity, and drive for innovation. They transformed how people interacted with information, entertainment, and each other, fostering a sense of empowerment, possibility, and imagination. The decade's innovations were stepping stones that bridged analog traditions with the digital future, creating patterns, expectations, and habits that still resonate today. What makes the 1980s particularly remarkable is the breadth and accessibility of technology. Devices were no longer limited to specialists. They became personal companions, tools for learning, entertainment, and self-expression. The era's spirit of experimentation encouraged people to explore, tinker, and push boundaries, making technology a playground as much as a utility. From gaming and music to computing and communication, the gadgets of the 1980s transformed daily life, shaping not only individual experiences but also collective culture. Ultimately, the 1980s taught us that technology was not just about function, it was about imagination, identity, and human potential. Gadgets became extensions of creativity, bridges to new experiences, and symbols of an exciting, rapidly changing world. The legacy of 1980s technology continues to inspire innovation, reminding us that the tools we use today often emerge from the dreams, experiments, and cultural currents of decades past. The 1980s was a decade that redefined popular culture, shaping the way people experienced entertainment and leaving an indelible mark on film, television, and music that continues to influence creators today. It was a time when imagination met innovation, when studios took risks with bold storytelling, and when new technologies allowed filmmakers to bring fantastical worlds to life. Audiences across the globe were captivated by stories that blended action, adventure, comedy, and science fiction, creating cinematic experiences that were both exhilarating and emotionally resonant. The 1980s were more than just a period of entertainment, they were a cultural moment that reflected the hopes, anxieties, and dreams of a generation. Hollywood experienced a major boom during this decade, with blockbuster films rising to prominence and changing the business of cinema forever. Directors like Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, John Hughes, and Ridley Scott crafted movies that became iconic, creating worlds that audiences could lose themselves in. E.T. The Extraterrestrial invited viewers to imagine the wonder of friendship across species, while Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi expanded a galaxy far, far away, capturing the imagination of millions and solidifying science fiction as a mainstream genre. These films were more than just stories, they were immersive experiences, blending cutting-edge special effects, compelling characters, and universal themes that resonated with viewers of all ages. The 1980s also saw the rise of action films as cultural phenomena. Heroes like Indiana Jones, John McClane in Die Hard, and the Terminator became symbols of resilience, ingenuity, and determination. Explosions, high-speed chases, and daring rescues defined the action genre, and audiences eagerly anticipated sequels and franchises that would extend these thrilling narratives. These films reflected the decade's fascination with adventure, individualism, and the triumph of human spirit, making action movies a defining feature of 1980s entertainment. Teen films and coming-of-age stories flourished, providing relatable narratives for younger audiences navigating adolescence and identity. Directors like John Hughes created classics such as The Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and 16 Candles, capturing the complexities of teenage life with humor, sensitivity, and authenticity. These films explored themes of friendship, rebellion, love, and self-discovery, resonating deeply with audiences who saw their own experiences reflected on the screen. Teen comedies and dramas of the 1980s became cultural touchstones, shaping generational identity and continuing to influence filmmakers today. Fantasy and adventure films transported audiences to extraordinary realms, blending imagination with groundbreaking visual effects. Movies like Labyrinth, The Neverending Story, and Legend invited viewers into mystical worlds filled with magic, danger, and wonder. These stories often featured young protagonists on transformative journeys, exploring courage, self-discovery, and the battle between good and evil. The 1980s were a golden age for fantasy storytelling, combining artistry, narrative creativity, and technological advancements to create films that remain beloved and visually captivating decades later. Horror films also gained immense popularity, tapping into both societal fears and universal anxieties. Directors like Wes Craven, John Carpenter, and Clive Barker pushed boundaries, creating suspenseful, terrifying experiences that defined the genre. Iconic franchises such as A Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, and Child's Play introduced characters who became household names, blending supernatural elements with psychological tension. Horror in the 1980s often reflected cultural anxieties, exploring fears of the unknown, technological advancement, and the fragility of human safety, while also providing audiences with thrilling escapism. Television played a crucial role in shaping entertainment culture during the 1980s. Sitcoms, dramas, and variety shows dominated the small screen, reflecting societal trends and providing shared cultural touchstones. Shows like Cheers, The Cosby Show, Family Ties, and Magnum, P.I. entertained audiences with humor, heart, and relatable narratives, creating a sense of community as viewers across the country tuned in week after week. Television also introduced children to beloved animated series such as He-Man, Transformers, and DuckTales, blending storytelling, merchandise, and imagination to create multi-layered entertainment experiences. Music and entertainment were increasingly intertwined, with movies often serving as platforms for iconic soundtracks. Artists like Prince, Madonna, Michael Jackson, and Duran Duran became not only musical superstars but also cultural icons, influencing fashion, dance, and lifestyle. Film soundtracks became pivotal, with songs enhancing storytelling and leaving lasting impressions on audiences. Michael Jackson's Thriller music video, blending cinematic techniques with musical performance, exemplified the era's fusion of audio-visual creativity, showcasing how entertainment could transcend traditional boundaries. Technological advancements played a key role in transforming entertainment. The proliferation of VHS tapes, home video systems, and cable television allowed audiences unprecedented access to movies and shows on their own schedules. Video rental stores became cultural hubs, providing opportunities for discovery, discussion, and shared experiences. This democratization of content empowered viewers, enabling people to curate their own entertainment and explore genres and films that were previously inaccessible. The 1980s marked a shift toward greater agency in media consumption, setting the stage for the on-demand culture that dominates today. The decade also witnessed the expansion of animation and family-friendly entertainment. Disney, Don Bluth, and other studios produced animated classics like The Fox and the Hound, An American Tale, and The Land Before Time, blending compelling storytelling, expressive characters, and vibrant visuals. These films often explored themes of friendship, perseverance, and courage, providing both entertainment and life lessons for younger audiences while appealing to adults with their artistic and narrative sophistication. Animation became a central pillar of 1980s entertainment, inspiring generations of viewers and creators alike. Video games increasingly intersected with movies and pop culture, creating a multi-dimensional entertainment ecosystem. Tie-ins, merchandise, and adaptations allowed audiences to engage with their favorite franchises in multiple ways, deepening immersion and creating loyalty to characters and stories. This synergy between gaming, movies, and television reflected the 1980s innovative spirit, merging media platforms in ways that anticipated modern transmedia storytelling. Audiences did not just watch, they played, interacted, and lived within these fictional worlds. Comedy films of the 1980s left a lasting impression, blending slapstick, satire, and clever dialogue. Films such as Ghostbusters, Back to School, and Caddyshack combined humor with memorable characters, cultural references, and quotable lines, creating lasting influence in both film and popular vernacular. Comedy became a vehicle for social commentary, exaggeration, and playful exploration of everyday life, providing audiences with both laughter and a lens through which to view contemporary society. Ultimately, movies and entertainment of the 1980s were more than just a source of diversion, they were a reflection of the decade's creativity, technological innovation, and cultural dynamics. They offered escape, inspiration, and insight, capturing the spirit of an era defined by imagination, bold experimentation, and a desire to push boundaries. From epic blockbusters to intimate comedies, from animated adventures to iconic television shows, the 1980s left an enduring legacy that continues to influence how we create, consume, and celebrate entertainment today. The 1980s demonstrated that storytelling could be both spectacular and accessible, blending artistry, innovation, and cultural resonance. Audiences were invited to dream bigger, laugh harder, and experience the thrill of worlds both familiar and fantastical. The decade's entertainment landscape reminds us that creativity knows no bounds, and that the stories we cherish often become mirrors of the times in which they were created. Whether through film, television, or music, the 1980s proved that entertainment is not only about amusement, it is about connection, imagination, and the timeless power of human storytelling. The 1980s was a decade that exploded with boldness, individuality, and flamboyance in fashion, creating some of the most recognizable and influential trends in modern history. Unlike previous decades, the 1980s celebrated self-expression, pushing boundaries with bright colors, oversized silhouettes, and daring combinations that challenged conventional norms. Fashion became a language through which people communicated identity, social status, and cultural affiliation. From high-fashion runways in Paris and Milan to the streets of New York, London, and Tokyo, style in the 1980s was audacious, dynamic, and unapologetically expressive, reflecting the energy, optimism, and eclectic spirit of the decade. One of the defining features of 1980s fashion was the rise of power dressing. Influenced by the booming corporate world and women entering the workforce in unprecedented numbers, fashion embraced structure, authority, and confidence. Shoulder pads, tailored blazers, high-waist skirts, and bold accessories became symbols of empowerment, enabling women to command attention and assert their presence. Power dressing was about more than just clothes, it was a visual statement of ambition and independence, reflecting broader social shifts and the evolving roles of women in society. Iconic figures such as Princess Diana, Margaret Thatcher, and Madonna further cemented the visual vocabulary of power dressing, influencing trends worldwide. Casual and street fashion also experienced a major transformation during the 1980s, fueled by music, youth culture, and the rise of subcultures. Denim became a universal canvas for self-expression, with acid-wash jeans, jean jackets, and overalls dominating wardrobes across genders. Punk, new wave, and hip-hop cultures contributed unique aesthetics that emphasized individuality and rebellion. Punk fashion, with its leather jackets, ripped clothing, safety pins, and bold hairstyles, communicated defiance and countercultural identity, while new wave and synthpop styles introduced neon colors, geometric patterns, and futuristic silhouettes that mirrored the energetic, electronic music of the era. Hip-hop fashion emerged in urban communities, popularizing tracksuits, sneakers, baseball caps, and gold chains, blending comfort, style, and cultural pride. Accessories played a pivotal role in 1980s fashion, often becoming the focal point of outfits. Big, bold jewelry, including chunky bracelets, oversized earrings, layered necklaces, and statement rings, was ubiquitous. Belts were often cinched at the waist to accentuate silhouettes, and gloves, headbands, and hats added flair to everyday looks. Sunglasses with colorful frames or mirrored lenses became essential accessories, enhancing both style and attitude. The 1980s taught people that fashion was as much about attitude and confidence as it was about the clothes themselves. How you wore something could be just as important as what you wore. Athletic and sports-inspired fashion gained massive popularity, influenced by the rise of aerobics, fitness culture, and celebrity endorsements. Leg warmers, spandex, headbands, and colorful tracksuits became everyday wear, blurring the lines between exercise gear and casual street style. Sneakers, particularly high-top models, were not just functional, they were status symbols and fashion statements. Icons like Jane Fonda, Richard Simmons, and Michael Jordan brought athletic fashion into mainstream culture, merging health, style, and cultural influence into a cohesive trend that defined the decade. Hairstyles in the 1980s were bold and experimental, reflecting the exuberance of fashion and music trends. Big, voluminous hair became a hallmark of the decade, achieved through teasing, backcombing, and the liberal use of hairspray. Women experimented with layers, perms, and vibrant colors, while men embraced mullets, feathered styles, and punk-inspired spikes. Hair became a form of personal expression, a canvas to convey personality, rebellion, or glamour. Musicians and celebrities heavily influenced these trends, turning hairstyles into cultural symbols that resonated far beyond the fashion world. Colors and patterns in 1980s fashion were unapologetically vibrant and playful. Neon hues, bold primary colors, animal prints, and geometric designs dominated wardrobes, capturing the era's enthusiasm for experimentation. Contrasting textures, denim with leather, lace with spandex, or silk with velvet, were layered to create dynamic visual effects. Color blocking, metallic fabrics, and sequins were used to maximize impact, ensuring that outfits commanded attention and conveyed energy. The decade's palette and patterns reflected a sense of optimism, creativity, and a desire to break free from muted tones and conservative designs of previous generations. Denim became a versatile and essential fabric, representing both rebellion and casual coolness. Acid wash jeans, high-waist styles, jean jackets, and skirts were worn by people across age groups and social classes, often personalized with patches, pins, or embroidery. Denim's ubiquity signified its cultural importance. It was a symbol of self-expression, accessibility, and effortless style. Layering denim with contrasting fabrics or pairing it with statement accessories became a hallmark of 1980s fashion experimentation. Footwear evolved as a critical component of 1980s style. Pumps, platforms, boots, and sneakers were all central to creating cohesive looks that reflected the wearer's personality. Platforms and chunky heels emphasized boldness, while athletic sneakers and high tops conveyed casual confidence and urban cool. Footwear was no longer just functional, it became an extension of identity, aligning with music, subculture, and lifestyle choices. Makeup trends in the 1980s mirrored the overall boldness of fashion. Bright eyeshadows, heavy blush, and vibrant lip colors were used to create dramatic, eye-catching looks. Artists like Madonna popularized expressive makeup as a form of self-expression, encouraging experimentation and individuality. The era embraced excess and creativity in beauty, demonstrating that personal style was a holistic experience involving clothing, accessories, hair, and makeup in harmony. Fashion in the 1980s also intersected with media and celebrity culture in unprecedented ways. Music videos, films, and television shows popularized trends rapidly, turning icons into style leaders. Madonna, Cyndi Lauper, Prince, and Michael Jackson became trendsetters, inspiring millions to emulate their looks. Movies such as Flashdance, Footloose, and Dirty Dancing influenced clothing, hairstyles, and accessories, demonstrating the power of visual media in shaping consumer tastes and cultural perceptions of style. Ultimately, 1980s fashion was about freedom, experimentation, and self-expression. It celebrated individuality and creativity, encouraging people to embrace bold colors, unique combinations, and daring silhouettes. The decade's influence can still be felt today, with contemporary designers drawing inspiration from neon colors, oversized silhouettes, and eclectic accessories. 1980s fashion remains a testament to a time when people were willing to take risks, push boundaries, and redefine what it meant to dress for themselves, rather than simply following convention. The 1980s taught us that fashion is a reflection of culture, music, and social change, a dynamic, expressive language that communicates identity, mood, and aspiration. By embracing boldness, variety, and personality, the decade redefined what it meant to be stylish, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire, captivate, and influence designers, artists, and fashion enthusiasts around the world. The 1980s was a decade of tremendous technological transformation, a period when innovations emerged in rapid succession that would shape the modern world. From personal computing to gaming, consoles, mobile communication, and medical advancements, technology fundamentally changed how people worked, played, and connected. Unlike previous decades when technology was largely the domain of scientists and engineers, the 1980s democratized innovation, bringing powerful tools and devices into homes and daily life. This era was defined not only by the creation of groundbreaking gadgets but also by a cultural shift that embraced speed, efficiency, and a fascination with the future. One of the most significant technological revolutions of the 1980s was the rise of personal computing. Companies like IBM, Apple, and Commodore made computers accessible to the general public, transforming them from specialized business tools into household essentials. The IBM PC, introduced in 1981, became a standard for both work and home use, while Apple's Macintosh, released in 1984, revolutionized user interfaces with its graphical design and mouse-driven controls. Personal computers offered unprecedented opportunities for education, productivity, and creativity, laying the foundation for the digital revolution that would dominate the following decades. The concept of having a computer on your desk was no longer science fiction, it became reality, reshaping how people approached information, communication, and problem-solving. Gaming technology also saw explosive growth, marking the decade as a golden era for video games. Home consoles like the Nintendo Entertainment System (NES) and Sega Master System brought interactive entertainment into living rooms, while arcade games such as Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, and Space Invaders captivated audiences of all ages. Gaming became a cultural phenomenon, influencing fashion, music, and even language, as players shared tips, strategies, and high scores. The rise of gaming technology emphasized fun, engagement, and interactivity, pushing the boundaries of graphic design, storytelling, and sound engineering. Communication technology underwent dramatic changes as well. Mobile phones, though large and expensive, became commercially available, giving people the ability to communicate on the go. The Motorola Dynatac, released in 1983, symbolized the beginning of mobile connectivity, allowing users to make calls without being tied to a landline. This innovation foreshadowed the profound impact of mobile communication on business, social interaction, and global connectivity. Additionally, fax machines and early forms of electronic mail began to streamline business communications, increasing efficiency and accessibility. In entertainment, technology transformed music, film, and television. The Walkman, popularized by Sony in the 1980s, allowed people to carry their music anywhere, creating personal soundtracks for daily life. Synthesizers, drum machines, and digital recording technology revolutionized music production, giving rise to genres like synthpop, electronic dance music, and hip-hop. Television experienced technical innovations including cable networks, satellite broadcasting, and VCRs, which allowed viewers to record shows and watch films at their convenience. These developments reshaped media consumption, providing unprecedented control and personalization. Medical and scientific technology advanced rapidly, improving diagnostics, treatment, and research capabilities. Imaging technologies such as MRI and quartz scans became widely available, offering detailed, non-invasive insights into the human body. These innovations enabled earlier detection of diseases, improved surgical planning, and enhanced understanding of anatomy and physiology. Biotechnology began emerging as a significant field, with breakthroughs in genetics, pharmaceuticals, and laboratory techniques opening new possibilities for medicine, agriculture, and environmental science. Technology was no longer just a convenience, it was increasingly a tool for life-saving innovation and discovery. Consumer electronics flourished, emphasizing convenience, personalization, and novelty. Items like cordless phones, digital watches, and early camcorders became symbols of modern living, blending practicality with the excitement of cutting-edge design. People were integrating technology into play, education, and home life, creating a seamless interaction between humans and machines. The 1980s also witnessed the early development of networking and computer communication. Bulletin board systems (BBS), early modems, and local area networks allowed users to share messages, files, and information electronically. While primitive by today's standards, these systems represented a fundamental shift in connecting and collaborating across distances, foreshadowing the global, interconnected world of the 1990s and beyond. In transportation, technological innovations enhanced both safety and efficiency. Automotive advancements included improved fuel injection systems, aerodynamic designs, and early electronic components for better performance. High-speed trains and aviation technology reflected a broader trend toward speed and convenience in travel. Robotics and automation began making visible impacts in manufacturing and industry. Factories incorporated automated assembly lines, robotic arms, and computerized control systems, increasing productivity while reducing human error. These innovations signaled a shift toward a technologically integrated, industrial world, where machines performed tasks previously reserved for skilled labor. Space exploration also captured the imagination. NASA's Space Shuttle program showcased reusable spacecraft, satellite deployment, and scientific research in orbit. Missions like the Hubble Space Telescope, developed in the 1980s and launched in 1990, promised unprecedented insights into the universe. Space technology demonstrated humanity's growing mastery of complex systems, inspiring generations to dream beyond Earth. Ultimately, the 1980s was a decade where technology transitioned from specialized, industrial applications to integrated, everyday experiences. It was marked by experimentation, accessibility, and rapid adoption, creating a culture that celebrated innovation. Personal computers, gaming consoles, mobile phones, entertainment devices, medical imaging, and automation transformed society, setting the stage for the interconnected, digital world we inhabit today. The innovations of the 1980s taught us that technology is not just about function, it is about reshaping lifestyles, culture, and imagination. It encouraged creativity, expanded possibilities, and challenged individuals to interact with the world in new, dynamic ways. By merging accessibility with futuristic thinking, the decade laid the foundations for the digital revolution, proving that innovation depends as much on vision and curiosity as on engineering and design. The 1980s showed that technology could be both transformative and personal, touching lives in ways that were practical, entertaining, and aspirational. Its influence endures, demonstrating that the inventions, experiments, and bold ideas of this vibrant decade continue to define how we live, work, play, and dream in the 21st century. The 1980s was a decade of profound political change, social movements, and cultural evolution, a period where the world witnessed both tension and transformation. Political landscapes shifted dramatically, ideologies clashed, and societies began to grapple with issues that would define the late 20th century. From the rise of conservative governments in the West to the decline of authoritarian regimes in the East, the 1980s was a time of both confrontation and reform. The decade's social movements reflected the voices of communities demanding change, equality, and justice, while cultural shifts influenced how people expressed identity, art, and values. Understanding this period requires examining the interplay between politics, activism, and culture, which together created a unique tapestry of human experience that continues to resonate today. In the Western world, the 1980s saw the rise of conservative political leaders who emphasized free market economics, national pride, and a more assertive international stance. Figures like Ronald Reagan in the United States and Margaret Thatcher in the United Kingdom championed policies that reshaped economies and redefined government roles. Reaganomics, characterized by tax cuts, deregulation, and reduced government spending on social programs, sparked debate over economic inequality, growth, and the responsibilities of the state. Meanwhile, Thatcher's leadership in Britain focused on privatization, limiting the power of trade unions, and promoting entrepreneurialism. These policies had long-lasting effects, influencing not only economic systems but also cultural attitudes toward wealth, work, and individualism. Internationally, the Cold War continued to dominate global politics, though the 1980s also introduced a new era of diplomatic negotiation and incremental reform. The decade was marked by intense rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union, with proxy conflicts, nuclear tensions, and ideological battles shaping foreign policy decisions. Yet toward the latter part of the decade, leaders such as Mikhail Gorbachev in the Soviet Union initiated policies of glasnost openness and perestroika restructuring, which introduced political transparency and economic reform. These initiatives contributed to a gradual thaw in Cold War tensions, setting the stage for the eventual collapse of the Soviet Union and the reshaping of Eastern Europe. Diplomacy, negotiation, and the willingness to embrace change became defining features of late 1980s politics, highlighting the complex interplay between power, ideology, and pragmatism. Social movements in the 1980s reflected growing awareness of human rights, environmental concerns, and gender equality. Feminist activism continued to push for equal opportunities in education, work, and political representation, while advocacy for LGBTQ+ rights gained momentum, challenging societal norms and demanding legal protections. Anti-nuclear and environmental campaigns addressed the growing fears of ecological degradation and the risks of nuclear technology, drawing attention to the interconnectedness of human activity and planetary health. These movements empowered citizens to participate in shaping society, emphasizing grassroots action, community engagement, and the power of collective voices in influencing policy and cultural norms. Cultural shifts in the 1980s were closely tied to political and social developments, as media, music, and art reflected and shaped public consciousness. The rise of television networks like MTV transformed music and visual culture, giving birth to the music video as a powerful medium for storytelling, marketing, and identity expression. Pop icons such as Michael Jackson, Madonna, and Prince not only dominated charts but also influenced fashion, dance, and social attitudes, creating a shared cultural experience across nations. Cinema, literature, and visual arts also mirrored societal concerns, with films exploring themes of technological anxiety, political tension, and personal identity, while literature addressed issues of gender, race, and class. Cultural expression became a lens through which people could navigate, critique, and celebrate the complexities of their time. Economic and social disparities continued to influence political discourse and social movements. Urbanization, globalization, and technological change created new opportunities but also widened gaps between the wealthy and the working class. Activists highlighted these inequalities, advocating for labor rights, fair wages, and equitable access to education and healthcare. The 1980s became a decade of both celebration and confrontation, where progress coexisted with challenges, and where social consciousness began to intersect with political and economic realities. Communities learned to organize, to demand change, and to envision a more just and equitable future, laying the groundwork for reforms that would extend into the 1990s and beyond. International conflicts and humanitarian crises shaped public perception and mobilized social action. Wars in Central America, the Middle East, and Africa, combined with famines and refugee crises, highlighted the need for international cooperation and humanitarian intervention. Organizations and advocacy groups emerged to address these issues, fostering a sense of global citizenship and shared responsibility. The media played a critical role in raising awareness, with images of suffering and resilience transmitted across television screens, newspapers, and emerging digital platforms. People became increasingly aware of global interdependence, and social movements often sought to translate this awareness into political pressure, aid, and activism. Technological and media developments also influenced politics and social movements. The proliferation of computers, video recording, and satellite communication allowed for faster dissemination of information and more coordinated activism. Social awareness campaigns could reach larger audiences, while investigative journalism and documentaries exposed corruption, injustice, and inequality. Technology empowered both citizens and organizations to mobilize, campaign, and educate, demonstrating that innovation was not limited to science and industry but was equally transformative in civic life. Cultural diversity and global influences became more prominent during the 1980s, as migration, media exchange, and international travel expanded cultural horizons. Music, fashion, and cuisine were increasingly shaped by cross-cultural interactions, creating hybrid styles and shared experiences across borders. This globalization of culture also facilitated the spread of social ideas and political concepts, connecting movements for human rights, environmental protection, and gender equality across continents. People began to see themselves as part of a broader, interconnected world, with cultural exchange serving as both inspiration and catalyst for change. Youth culture in the 1980s was a powerful driver of social and political engagement. Teenagers and young adults embraced new musical genres, fashion trends, and digital technologies, while also participating in activism, volunteerism, and community organizing. From punk rock and hip-hop to early digital art and video games, youth culture challenged traditional norms, experimented with identity, and expressed resistance to established authority. Young people became both consumers and creators, shaping the social and cultural landscape in ways that reflected their values, aspirations, and concerns. The 1980s also witnessed the rise of consumerism and material culture as defining features of society. Advertising, branding, and marketing targeted personal identity, lifestyle, and aspiration, intertwining economic activity with cultural expression. While consumerism generated debates over environmental and social impacts, it also reflected the era's fascination with choice, individuality, and the possibilities offered by technological and economic progress. The relationship between culture, politics, and commerce became increasingly interwoven, illustrating how social trends, political agendas, and market forces could shape public consciousness and everyday life. Ultimately, the 1980s was a decade in which politics, social movements, and cultural shifts converged to create a dynamic, transformative environment. Governments implemented policies that reshaped economies, societies demanded recognition and justice, and culture reflected and influenced evolving norms. This period demonstrated the power of activism, the impact of leadership, and the role of media in shaping public perception. It was a time of both confrontation and collaboration, where challenges inspired creativity, engagement, and dialogue. The legacy of the 1980s in politics, social movements, and culture remains evident today. Many issues and movements that gained momentum during this decade laid the foundation for future reforms and social awareness. The decade taught that political decisions, social activism, and cultural expression are deeply interconnected, and that change often arises from the interaction of ideas, action, and vision. By examining this pivotal period, we gain insight into the forces that shaped modern society, revealing how the 1980s fostered resilience, innovation, and an enduring drive for progress. The 1980s remind us that history is not only about events or leaders, but about the people, movements, and cultural expressions that define the spirit of an era. It was a decade of transformation, where politics, social consciousness, and culture merged to create lasting change. By understanding these dynamics, we better appreciate how societies evolve, how citizens influence their world, and how culture both mirrors and shapes the human experience. As we reach the end of our journey through the transformative decade of the 1980s, it is clear that this period was more than just a series of political events or cultural milestones. It was a time of profound change, a decade where societies redefined themselves, where individuals and communities found their voices, and where movements big and small left lasting imprints on the world. From the rise of influential leaders and shifting global politics to the energy of social activism and the explosion of cultural creativity, the 1980s remind us that progress is always a combination of action, ideas, and courage. The lessons from this decade continue to influence our world today, showing us how resilience, imagination, and collective effort can shape history. Thank you all for joining us on this exploration of the 1980s. We hope you enjoyed diving into the politics, social movements, and cultural shifts that defined this pivotal decade. If you found this journey insightful, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. We love bringing history to life with you, and we can't wait to continue uncovering more fascinating stories from the past. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and thank you for watching.